Whenever I shoot these videos, I try to think of any aspect of my incarceration which was unique to me. If I was housed in a part of the prison that people don't usually go to, or if I saw or experienced something that I don't think it's talked about, well, that's what I want to talk about because it's new information. One aspect of incarceration, the importance of which I cannot overstate, is an inmate's television. You spend a lot of time watching TV if you're locked up in California. You figure whatever your living area is, if it's a dormitory, if it's a cell, if it's just a bunk that they slapped in the middle of the day room and called it a living area, you're there a lot. Some days, you're there 24 hours a day. You don't leave your bed, and those days could stretch out for weeks or months. It's called a lockdown. But in addition to that, even whenever a program is running, well, you're going to spend 10, 12, 14, even 16 hours a day in your little area. So yeah, TV is something you spend a lot of time watching. And not just the primetime stuff, but daytime television. You have your morning news, you have your talk shows. I had one cellie who had been watching the same soap opera for 12 years whenever I met him. He didn't have a TV, so he just watched it whenever he could. He explained to me that if he could watch on my TV his soap opera just 2 days a week, Monday and Friday at 2, he'd be really happy. And those were the important days because that was whenever the plot progressed. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, he didn't really care. He said those days were boring. But Monday and Friday, those were important days. Other people, well, they like Dr. Phil or Oprah or The View or whatever the morning TV is. One guy in morning television who has a surprisingly strong opinion associated with him in CDCR is Bob Barker, the host of The Price is Right up until about 4 years ago. Bob Barker is not disliked because of his stance on spaying and neutering animals, or even because of the job he did hosting the show. He's disliked because there is another Bob Barker out there who founded a company called the Bob Barker Clothing Company. They provide institutional jumpsuits, mattresses, pants, things like that to prisons, and of course to inmates in CDCR. As a result, many inmates look down at their shoes or at the tag of their boxers and realize it's Bob Barker. I heard more than one person wax violent about how angry they were that Bob Barker couldn't make a more quality product to sell to prisons. After all, he has all that Price is Right money. Can't he make boxers that don't fall off you whenever you wear them? Of course, pointing out that there's more than one Bob Barker in the world and that the prison buys their clothes to the person who manufactures it the cheapest. Well, these things don't actually matter. There's an opinion in play. People are angry at Bob Barker and you go along with it or you ignore it, but correcting people probably won't get you anywhere. Another personality from daytime television who people had a pretty strong opinion about was John Walsh, the host of America's Most Wanted. It wasn't because he's involved in law enforcement and catching criminals or anything like that. In fact, by and large, inmates seem pretty supportive of that. I guess it's because America's Most Wanted focused heavily on rapists and child molesters and serial murderers, people that inmates as a whole, they don't like. But apparently he shot a piece of BRoll at a prison. And there had been a number of inmates working in wherever this was. I heard it was a kitchen or a warehouse. And this story could even be apocryphal because I heard it from a bunch of people, but I heard it like an urban legend. I knew a guy who knew a guy who was there. But apparently John Walsh had showed up with a film crew to film in this given area inside of a prison, a kitchen, I guess. And Squad had come bursting in and told the 20 or so inmates who were working in the area, everybody shut up, go line up against that wall, nobody move, nobody talk, we mean business. And while the inmates were lined up, not talking or moving against a wall, the film crew with John Walsh came in and set up and spent the next 3 hours shooting a couple of minutes of footage. in which John Walsh waxed eloquent about how dangerous the place he were and how scary the inmates were there. Not referring to the 15 or 20 inmates lined up against the wall at gunpoint, but to the half-dozen actors dressed as inmates that he had brought into the area to film with. I guess a lot of inmates took this personally. It seemed a little hypocritical. I can't imagine caring that much myself, but it is the type of thing that whenever you have just hours to think about and you're watching the guy on TV, I guess you get an opinion. And that does bring us to the point of today's video, the thing that I want to say. Whenever I was in prison, I often tried to correct people with their silly beliefs. You know, Bob Barker isn't actually the guy on TV. He's the guy who owns the clothing company. They're different. Or, you know, John Walsh was just trying to be safe. The prison might have made it so things had to be that way. Well, I never did any good saying things like that. All I did was start arguments, essentially. So, in your everyday life, if you run into the guy who just cares too much about something that doesn't matter, maybe he has a video game that he just plays all day long, or he has a collection of graphic shirts that he loves and tries to show off. Well, whatever it is, if he's not hurting anybody, he's not making the world a worse place, well, just let him do his silly, stupid thing. Let him be wrong, if you can. Thank you for listening today.